when you look at the genealogy of Jesus as given in the book of Matthew, you see that there are several women that are named, and some of them are women with very interesting stories. Today, we're going to look at one of these women on this week's lesson. Hello, welcome to this week's lesson. I'm Brian Vermeer, and we're beginning a 2-week study on the book of Ruth. Ruth is a very interesting book. It's very personal to me. My daughter's middle name is Ruth. Ruth was also the name of one of my grandmothers. And an interesting story, our church has this huge family Bible on display in one of our hallways. And when my daughter was younger, whenever she would walk by it, she would turn it to the book of Ruth because that was her middle name. But before we begin our study here, I'd like to remind you, if you enjoy these lessons, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to the Mr. Vermeer's Class YouTube channel. Please follow the Mr. Vermeer's Class Facebook page. And if at all possible, if you can, donate to the Mr. Vermeer's Class Patreon page. It would certainly help me out a whole lot. All right. So let's talk about the book of Ruth. This takes place during the time of the judges. So there is no king in Israel yet. And actually, the account of Ruth here will lead up to Israel gaining a king. The backstory here is a famine has come on the land of Judah. And a certain man in the tribe of Judah named Elimelech has decided to move his family to the land of Moab. And that way they could possibly get some food, although the famine is actually going on there a little bit as well. And first of all, let's talk a little bit about this land of Moab. Moab was a distant relative of the Israelites, actually. The Moabites were people who normally were unfriendly to Israel. They're one of the nations that Israel was supposed to completely defeat and destroy, but they didn't. But again, they were distantly related to the Israelites through Abraham's nephew Lot. When Lot escaped from the city of Sodom, the only ones who escaped were he and his 2 daughters. And the 2 daughters, thinking, no man is ever going to want to marry us because of, our past, because of what's happened here. Tell you what, let's get our father Lot drunk, and then each of us will sleep with him, and that way we can each have children. So, one night, Lot's older daughter gets him drunk. She sleeps with him. She becomes pregnant, and she has a son named Moab. And this son becomes the ancestor of the Moabites, of the people of the land of Moab, who eventually turn away from God and start following their own gods and become eventually hostile to the Israelites. By the way, the other daughter also did the same thing and had a son named Ammon, who became the father of the Ammonites. So, Elimelech has taken his family and gone to the land of Moab. His family consists of he and his wife, Naomi, and their 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion. While they're in Moab, Elimelech dies. And so Naomi is left with the 2 sons. The 2 sons eventually get married. It does not specifically say who married who. I would assume that the older marries the first one mentioned and the younger marries the second one mentioned. So Mahlon most likely married this woman named Orpah, and Chilion married a woman named Ruth. And a couple interesting things here about these names. First of all, this name Orpah, this wife's name, there was a woman in the past century who was supposed to have been named Orpah, but in filling out her birth certificate when she was born, they accidentally transposed 2 of the letters. So instead of being named Orpah, she was named Oprah. And this woman became, of course, Oprah Winfrey. She was supposed to have been named after this, wife of one of Elimelech and Naomi's daughters. The name Ruth means friendship. And we're going to see how Ruth showed this quality of friendship to Naomi. The name Naomi, by the way, happens to mean pleasant. So Naomi may have been a pleasant woman. Well, Elimelech has died. Naomi's two sons get married. And then those two sons die. So Naomi is feeling like, my world is ending here. I've lost my husband. I've lost my two sons. I'm in a foreign land among foreign people. What am I supposed to do? So she decides to go back to the land of Judah. She has heard that God has rescued the land of Judah from the famine. So she decides she's going to go back. So our first reading here comes in Ruth chapter 1, verses 11 to 15. And we're going to see what Naomi tells her two daughters-in-law, who are now also both widowed as well. And technically, therefore, really don't have any ties to her anymore. It says, "But Naomi replied, 'Return home, my daughters. Why do you want to go with me? Am I able to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. Go on, for I'm too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me to have a husband tonight and to bear sons, would you be willing to wait for them to grow up? Would you restrain yourselves from remarrying? No, my daughters, my life is much too bitter for you to share, because the Lord's hand has turned against me.' Again they wept loudly, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Naomi said, 'Look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Follow your sister-in-law.' So Naomi tells her two daughters-in-law, Orpah and Ruth, 'Look, my husband is dead. Your husbands are dead. You have no ties to my family anymore. You have no loyalty to me. You don't need to have any loyalty to me. So you're from the land of Moab. You live here. Go back to your parents. Get married again. Have families. Live good lives. I'm going back to Bethlehem, where my family is. I'm too old to have any more kids. Don't wait around for me, because I'm not going to have any more sons. And even if I did, would you be willing to wait another 15 to 20 years to get married again? So just go home. You don't need to hang around with me anymore.' And she's looking at herself and saying that the Lord's hand has turned against her. It's real easy when bad things happen to us, especially when a lot of bad things happen to us, like has happened to Naomi here. She's lost her husband. She's lost her two sons. She thinks God has turned against her. It's real easy to suddenly think that God hates me. I must have done something very awful. God has just completely turned against me for some reason. We don't look at it often as God is setting me up to make something great happen. And that's the way I think we need to look at sometimes when bad things do happen to us. When we find ourselves in a slump, when we find ourselves in a bad situation, we need to often look at it as God could be setting me up for something great. And don't just think of it as God is punishing me for something I've done. Naomi can't think of anything that she's done that would warrant this. She just feels like God is abandoning her. But let me tell you, God never abandons you. God is always right there. If you feel far away from God, it's not because God has moved away from you. It's because you have moved away from Him. And He's there waiting for you to come back. Now, in this case, Naomi doesn't need to return to God. She's still faithful to God. God may be testing her to see what happens. Actually, I think here God is testing her daughters-in-law. How faithful are they going to be? We see here that Orpah did not stay faithful, and that's nothing against Orpah. Orpah is just simply following Naomi's advice. She's going back to her family, going back to her parents, and she's going to just get married again and have a family and live happily ever after. But it says Ruth clung to her. Ruth, whose name means friendship, is staying with Naomi. She doesn't want Naomi going back to Bethlehem by herself. Naomi is in a bad state. Naomi is extremely depressed. You know, oftentimes when our friends get down, when our friends get in a bad mood, it's real easy for us to just want to leave them alone. But that's when they need us the most. You're a true friend if you stay with your friends even when things are going against them. And Ruth is living up to her name, and she is being a true friend to Naomi. How true of a friend is she going to be? Let's continue on and look at verses 16 to 18 to see what Ruth tells Naomi. It says, "But Ruth replied, 'Don't plead with me to abandon you or to return and not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go. And wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me and do so severely, if anything but death separates you and me.' When Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped talking to her." I have heard this poetry here actually used as a wedding vow before. It's a beautiful statement of loyalty. Where you go, I will go. I'm going to stay with you, no matter where you go. Where you live, I will live. I'm not going to leave you. Your people will be my people. Ruth was from Moab. If Naomi goes back to Bethlehem in Judah, Ruth is now going to be the foreigner. And she's probably not going to be treated very well because she is a foreigner. It's going to be hard for her to find a husband because the Israelites were commanded, don't marry outside your faith. But Ruth goes on and says, "And your God will be my God." Ruth is turning away from the Moabite gods to follow Naomi's God, to follow Yahweh, to follow the one true God. She loves Naomi so much, she's willing to even change her beliefs, to change her religion, to stay with Naomi. She says, "Where you die, I will die. I'm going to stay with you until you die. I'm going to help take care of you until you die. And there I will be buried. Even after you die, I'm not going back. I'm going to stay in this land, and I'm going to stay with these people. May the Lord punish me and do so severely if anything but death separates you and me." Do we ever make an oath and say, "May the Lord punish me if I don't do this"? You'd think we'd be afraid to. I would not make an oath and say, "May God punish me severely if I don't do this," because I know that I'm a failure at certain things. I know that I've let people down. And I wouldn't want God to punish me for that. But Ruth makes that part of her oath. She swears that she's going to stay with Naomi for the rest of Naomi's life, and then even afterwards, she's going to become an Israelite. This is true friendship to a woman that she has no loyalty to. Yes, she was married to one of Naomi's sons at one time, but the son died before they even had any kids. So Naomi Ruth has no loyalty to Naomi. Ruth has nothing that binds her to Naomi. And Naomi even told her to go home. But Ruth is saying, no, I'm not going to do that. She is staying with her friend through the good times and the bad times. Are we that loyal to our friends? Are we that loyal to our family? That even when the bad times hit, we're right there for them. And it says, when Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped trying to talk her out of it. So Naomi said, come on. You can go back to Bethlehem and live with me. So Naomi returns to Bethlehem. She returns to the land of Judah. When she gets there, the people look at her and they say, Naomi, you look like you've had a hard time. And she has. And it shows. And Naomi says, don't call me Naomi anymore. Call me Mara. The word Naomi means pleasantness. The word Mara means bitterness. She's saying, don't call me pleasant anymore. Call me bitter. Because God has dealt bitterly with me. Again, God has treated me badly. I don't know why. So Naomi goes back home. She doesn't have a husband to take care of her anymore. She probably doesn't have parents to take care of her anymore. She is one of these true widows who has nothing to live on. All she has is her daughter-in-law to help take care of her. But her daughter-in-law is a foreigner. No one wants to marry her. She can't get a job anywhere. So what is she going to do? Naomi sends Ruth out to go gleaning. Now, what is gleaning? Gleaning is described in Leviticus 19. In the book of Leviticus, it mentions when you go out to harvest your fields, there are certain rules that harvesters were to follow. And one of those rules was, don't harvest all the way to the edge of your field. In other words, go out and harvest as much as you can, but if you miss that right along the edge, just leave it there. And specifically, don't purposely go all the way to the edge. Leave at least a little bit on the edge that you don't harvest. When you're carrying your crops back that you've already picked up, if you drop any, don't go back and pick them up. Leave them laying on the ground. And after you have harvested your field, don't go back over it looking for anything that you may have left. In this way, God provides for the poor people of the land. He says, you are to allow the poor people to come into your field after your harvesters have gone through, and they're allowed to go through and pick up anything that either you didn't harvest, the bits on the edges that you didn't harvest, or anything that you've dropped, or anything that you may have missed. Any crops that you have left there, the poor people can come and pick up. That's called gleaning. And Naomi sends Ruth to go out and glean, to go to these fields near the city of Bethlehem and just go pick up any grain that the harvesters have left behind. And that's what they're going to live on. They're going to live on the scraps that the harvesters have left. It's a way of providing for the poor. But the interesting thing about it here is God is saying, yes, I'm making the wealthy purposely leave things for the poor, but notice the poor still have to actually go and harvest it. They still actually have to go and get it. The poor still have to work for what they get. This is not just go hand food to the poor. This is leave some of your crops there so the poor can come harvest it themselves, so they can come gather it. That way, they still keep their dignity. They're still working to get what they have. Well, Ruth happens to go to the field of a man named Boaz. Boaz is a distant relative. Well, not very distant. Boaz is a relative of Elimelech. Ruth doesn't know that, and Naomi doesn't know where Ruth is going. Ruth just goes out to this field, happens to belong to a man who is related to Naomi's husband, Naomi's late husband. God sometimes provides. God sometimes sets things up to help us to succeed. Boaz is supervising the harvest, and he sees Ruth out there among the poor men and women who are out there gleaning. And in Ruth chapter 2, verses 5 to 9, he's going to inquire about her. It says, Boaz asked his servant, who was in charge of the harvesters, "Whose young woman is this?" The servant answered, "She's the young Moabite woman who returned with Naomi from the territory of Moab." She asked, "Will you let me gather fallen grain among the bundles behind the harvesters?" She came and has been on her feet since early morning, except that she rested a little in the shelter. Then Boaz said to Ruth, "Listen, my daughter, don't go and gather grain in another field, and don't leave this one, but stay here close to my female servants. See which field they are harvesting and follow them. Haven't I ordered the young men not to touch you? When you're thirsty, go and drink from the jars that the young men have filled." So Boaz sees Ruth out there harvesting, out there gleaning, and he's immediately attracted to her. He realized, hey, that's a nice looking, young woman out there. I wonder who she is. So he asks his chief harvester, the guy in charge, who is that? And most everyone in Bethlehem has heard about Naomi returning and heard about this young woman that came with her. So the chief harvester tells them, this is Ruth. This is the young woman who came back with Naomi. She's Naomi's daughter-in-law. So Boaz immediately realizes, Naomi, that's my late relative's wife. And Ruth is her daughter-in-law. That makes her kind of a relation to me by marriage. Although the marriage is over because, she's widowed. So in a way, she's kind of a close relative of mine. So Boaz goes to Ruth. Ruth, it says, the chief harvester says, she came and she's been working since early morning. She's been out here all day picking up. She wants to take care of Naomi. She's out there getting as much as she possibly can, as much as she can carry. Except for the short time that she rested in the shelter during probably around noon. So Boaz says, I'm going to help her out. And he goes to Ruth and he tells her, don't go to another field. Stay in my field because I'm going to take care of you. I've told my men to leave you alone. None of that. Don't worry about any of my men. They're not going to bother you. And stay with my young women. Stay with the women that work for me. They'll show you the fields to go to. They'll show you where to go pick up the food. So Boaz is helping Ruth out as much as he can. He wants to make sure she's able to get enough food for both her and for Naomi. And he wants to make sure that she stays safe while she's doing it. It could be dangerous for some of these young women to be out gleaning in these fields with these harvesters. So Boaz is saying, I've ordered my men not to touch you. If any of them, messes with you at all, they got to answer to me. So Boaz is trying to take care of her. Let's look at Ruth's response now as we finish up in verses 10 to 12 of chapter 2. It says, she fell face down, bowed to the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favor with you, so that you notice me, although I'm a foreigner?" Boaz answered her, "Everything you've done for your mother-in-law since your husband's death has been fully reported to me. How you left your father and mother in your native land, and how you came to a people you didn't previously know. May the Lord reward you for what you have done, and may you receive a full reward from the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge." Ruth says, "Why are you being so nice to me? I don't even know you. You don't know me. I'm a foreigner. I'm not an Israelite. I'm a Moabite. Why are you being so nice to me?" And Boaz simply tells her, "Because I've heard of the good things that you're doing for your mother-in-law. I've heard that you left your native land in order to stay with Naomi so you can help her out. You were willing to leave your entire culture. You were willing to leave your family to go with this woman to help take care of her in her old age. May God bless you for that. And I'm helping God to reward you," is basically what he's saying. You deserve reward for that. So I'm going to help reward you. He's also got some other thoughts in his mind, but we'll talk about those next week. Ruth goes back to Naomi and says, "Hey, look at this. I went to this field. I was able to get all this food." Naomi says, "Whose field did you go to?" And she says, "His name was Boaz." And Naomi says, "Boaz? He's related to us. He's the kinsman redeemer. He has the right to marry you if he chooses to." Stay tuned next week, and we'll see what happens to Ruth and Boaz.